Hello there guys, and welcome to the Eldar Sim YouTube channel. I'm your host for this evening, and yes, it is the one and only Hoppers. And yes, it is business as per usual. We are back after a week break from doing commentary and potentially doing races. Obviously, we are here at Mount Fuji, or Fuji Speedway as it likes to be known, within the world of Japanese racing, and it is the third visit to Japan this season, and it is also the penultimate round of the championship. It has been very interesting throughout the championship, and it has been probably one of the best and probably exciting. Also, there has been some thrills, spills, and also technically some interesting moments within this championship, as per usual for the Eldar Sim YouTube. Just bear with one sec, guys. But yes, we are here at the Fuji circuit for the penultimate round of the championship. This is going to be very interesting to see exactly what happens at the moment. At the moment there is only 6 races this evening. I hope we do get more before 7:45. I believe Dan Cope is missing this evening, and I believe Max Robertson is also missing. So there is a few drivers that are missing, and potentially there's a few that are here. So I will go through the points as per usual, and then we'll go through who is here and also with what has gone on within the season. So in first place is none other than Timmy Gill. He's actually sitting in pit lane at the moment. He's on 214 points. He's 16 points ahead of Lee Fitzy. Lee Fitzy is here. He's obviously, after a couple of missed races, or potentially a few nightmare races, should we put it. It's on 198. Then you've got God Gift John, who currently is obviously first out on practice. This is obviously practice. He's on 194. He's also tied with Christian Swire, but Christian is not returning for the remainder of the season, so God Gift John could potentially have a way of trying to get back up into contention to take the title, as he just goes wide up towards, well, out of the Dunlop sweeper there. Then you have, obviously, like I say, Christian Swire, but he's not taking part in the remainder of the season for some unbeknown reason. But then you have Adam Morgan. No, it is not British Touring Car Star. It is also a Welsh guy who has the same name. He's on 142, so he's 72 points behind. Potentially, he's 5th in the championship. Then you have Dean Atkinson, who's on 140. Then you have Brian Ross. Brian is here on 130. Then you have Ismail Nemri, who is here, but he's on 108 points. Just bear with 1 second. So it is going to be very much interesting. We do have potentially we do have well, I've lost the points. Do apologise. Just bear with me 1 second. I was just checking the YouTube channel to make sure that stream was up and running. Where the points are, and there you are. Then, yeah, so Ismail's on 108 points. He's got to be careful, because he's obviously, you know, he's had a few bit of bad luck, and he's trying to make amends for that this evening. Then we have Jay Baxter on 99 points. Jay hopefully should be here, the gingerbread machine, as I like to call it. Then you have Dan Cope. Sadly, Dan Cope is missing this evening. He's on 95. And then obviously with Andrew Osler not taking part for the remainder of the season, he's on 73. Then you have Richard Barton on 48, then Max Robertson on 36, and obviously Mark Palmer on 34. So there isn't probably a lot of things ongoing. Potentially it's going to be very, very interesting, and it's going to be all to play for this evening. And obviously you do have potentially a lot of interest. I'm hoping we do get more drivers this evening, because at the moment it's looking likely it's 6, and it's not going to be really interesting if we're not careful. But we see Brian Ross and Lee Fitzey potentially having a battle down the long straight here at Fuji. It is 1,000 kilometers long in length, and you know, it's going to be very much interesting to see what these guys can do in the Porsche Caymans. Obviously we do have not only do we have obviously the Porsche Caymans tonight, we do have the Sheldon British Touring Cars. Unfortunately that's not going to be streamed, so for some remainder of the season, I can't remember exactly the whole reason why it's not going to be streamed, but it is going to be, they're obviously going to be taking part within their championship. Then you have the Hoppers Motorsport Vlogs Mazda MX-5s with Malcolm Argyle potentially taking over Darren in the comms box for the remainder of the season. Obviously it is potentially 2 rounds to go in all 3 championships, and then obviously as of next season there is going to be a reconfiguration of championships. Not only will we have potentially the Toyota Yaris as a lower tier, so as a tier 3 campaign championship, we do have the GR4s that will be replacing the Caymans, and also we'll be having GR3s that will be replacing the BTCC for Friday evenings. Fridays are going to get rejigged and probably reshaped into probably better, and you know, it's going to be very interesting to see who ends up where. Obviously it's going to be one of them, and it will be probably amazing, as you know, it's just obviously going to be a bit of an idea this evening. So I'm just going to see if any more. So it will be very interesting to see exactly what happens. So yeah, it should be very interesting here at Fuji, especially when you go around Panasonic and potentially onto that 1,000 kilometers straight. It feels like it's an absolute eternity to get to turn number 1 here. Obviously you've got Mount Fuji in the background, and the weather here can be very mixed. In real life it can be glorious sunshine, the next minute it could be like monsoon conditions, but you know, it's home to Japanese Super GT. I believe the World Endurance Cup is also going to be is held here, so it's going to be very interesting. So we shall see exactly what goes on. I'll give you hopefully a guided lap tour in a moment or two. So Ismail Nemri will go with him. We'll go on board with Ismail going into turn number 1. I will try and remember exactly the corner names. He's heading up towards, I believe this is Coca-Cola Bend as it is on the advertisement at the moment. So that's into Coca-Cola, which will be very interesting to see exactly what goes on. I'll try, as I say, I'll try and get the circuit map up, and then we can give you a guided lap tour. So then, he's just coming up through Panasonic now. Oh no, Panasonic is the last corner, I do apologise. But yes, so we do have... So we go down this basically 1,000 kilometre straight, which leads us into turn number 1. It's also known as turn number 1. So I believe it is turn 1, yes, we'll call it turn 1 because that is what it's known. But it will be very interesting to see exactly what happens this evening, and we go through towards Coca-Cola, which is now going through 100R, and then we do have the hairpin, which is coming up. So the Wacos hairpin, as we're going to call it, because it's obviously nearby. And then obviously heading up to 300R. They're all radius corners in Japan, which is kind of really interesting to see exactly what happens. And then obviously into Dunlop, it's normally a chicane, but this evening they are just going flat out to the right, and then they do have potentially turn 10 and 11 is normally Dunlop chicane. Then you go into 13, then you go into Nets corner, which is basically here now. And then obviously up into Panasonic, which is the last corner. So that is a lap of Fuji, and potentially it will be very interesting to see. So it will be very interesting. I do believe at the moment we do have 7 drivers at the moment, so you know it's going to be pretty much interesting to see exactly how well things go for this evening, but it will be argumentatively interesting. So at the moment, you know, it will be very interesting to see what happens this evening. I'll just double check where the Mazda MX-5s are, the Hoppers Motorsport Vlogs MX-5s. I believe they're at the stream's not up yet, so yes, we'll give it a couple of minutes for the MX-5s, and then we will figure out where it is very shortly. As God Gift John gets a bit sideways going out of Dunlop, as you can tell, the weather conditions this year. So it will be very interesting. The weather is going to probably pick up. There's the Fuji mountain. It's notorious for its volcano on top. But it will be very interesting. We're going to see exactly what's going to kickstart this evening, potentially with 7 drivers this evening. It's not really going to be a problem, but it may have to be potentially going to be interesting, but never mind. We are getting underway very shortly for qualifying. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens this evening for the Eldar BTCC Blueprints Porsche Cayman. So it will be very much interesting to see exactly what happens. So we do have potentially 2 minutes to go for qualifying. Well, it's a minute to go, and it will be one of them. It will be very interesting to see exactly what happens. Hopefully the others do turn up, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't, then we'll just have to persevere with what we've got. But it will be very interesting to see exactly what goes on, and potentially whether we do have a battle on our hands. For most drivers, it could be very interesting, especially with Timmy leading the championship. You know, will he get sewn up here, or will he wait till the Nürburgring GP next week, where it is the final rounds of the championship? And it does feel like potentially, you know, it's been a lifetime we've visited iconic circuits, such as potentially very interesting, but we are about to get ready for qualifying. So this is the penultimate round of the championship, and it will be very interesting come late next week when it all comes down to the wire. But as I say, Timmy may have the title sewn up. We're just going to potentially wait and see, but at the moment it's looking likely. We've got unfortunately 7 drivers this evening, so it is a bit unfortunate, but we shall see, and we shall see exactly what happens for this evening as we get ready for qualifying. So we are going to get ready. We're going to make sure everyone goes out of pit lane. So at the moment there is only 7 drivers this evening, which, to be fair, it is a bit unfortunate, but I believe most people are leaving pit lane now, so it is looking likely that we are going to get quite very interesting lap times around Fuji at the moment. So Lee Fitzy will be the last one to take place, so we'll see what happens. So it is going to be obviously Adam Morgan there in the pink car. It's potentially very interesting, but yes, he's going to be out on a massive charge this evening. It is going to be hopefully interesting, but Obviously with 7 drivers it's going to make it a bit more difficult to try and have a bit of commentary, but you know, it does not matter. But it could be very interesting. But you've got Dean Atkinson in that luminous green and white car, potentially going to be pushing on. He's obviously looking for potentially his other podiums. He's had so many this season, so it is going to be probably very interesting to see exactly what the 7 guys can do this evening. Obviously, you know, it's going to be pretty much down to the effort of qualifying potentially at the moment, because there's only 7 of them. The tow isn't going to be able to be produced, so it's looking likely there's going to be a bit of contact. So it is going to be probably a bit challenging for some of these guys, but at the moment God Gift John is out going through the Waycross hairpin there, potentially now on his way towards Dunlop. Potentially Dunlop is normally a chicane, but it is a flat out right hand bend this evening. Potentially, you know, you don't have to technically brake. He gets a bit crossed up going out of Dunlop there, potentially trying to push away. He's probably trying to eke out an advantage and potentially try and push on potentially for some sort of lap time. I believe Dean Atkinson and Brian Ross at the moment are potentially also trying to get a tow off each other, but Panos heads up towards Panasonic now and potentially has that sort of advantage. He's going to probably set the benchmark. We'll see exactly what he can do with 6.5 minutes to go. So he's about to cross the line now. And he gets a 141.2021. So that's going to be very interesting. Dean Atkinson with a 142.9. Brian Ross with 143.7. Timmy at the moment, purple sector. What's he going to do? That's 144.9. Adam Morgan shoots up into second with a 141.943. So that is going to be very interesting. Ismail Nemri with a 145.449. And then Lee Fitzy with a 147.8. So at the moment, God Gift John going through the Waycross hairpin, potentially pushing on quite an advantage here, potentially trying to make sure it is going to be very interesting indeed. Like I say, there's only 7 drivers this evening, which is a bit of a poor show, but what can you do? We're going to have to persevere and get on with it this evening. But you know, never mind, it is towards the end of the season and potentially things could go either way. You've got Adam Morgan there still trying to get up to Panos' time, but it seems to me that Timmy's trying to escape the tow as well and trying to break it with 5 minutes to go in qualifying. So it is going to be very interesting as we head up towards Panasonic. Some of the guys are potentially going to be on the limit. Brian Ross there in the purple and green car, potentially having a bit of a challenge. You know, he's been obviously keeping a close eye with Dean Atkinson up into second now with a 141.9. Brian Ross fourth with a 143.441. Timmy up into second now, gets up into second with a 141.222. Adam Morgan up into third. He's pushed himself up into third with a 141.3. Lee Fitzy with 141.7. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But as I say, it's got 4 minutes to go, and anything can happen. Potentially, it should be interesting to see exactly what happens. But it will be very interesting to see exactly what happens within a couple of times. It will be a bit of a battle galore, hopefully, and potentially we do have some really good battles this evening between the 7 of them, with 3.5 minutes to go until qualifying does end. We do have Lee Fitzy here, who's potentially will go on board with him just for a few moments or two, potentially for the remaining half of qualifying, and it should be potentially very close. He's going up towards next corner now, and potentially will push on. He's obviously got Panos has gone quicker with a 140.977, so it's going to be very interesting indeed. We do have potentially a lot of battles. Brian Ross still with a 143.002. Timmy still pushing up to try and get to Panos' time with 140.9. So the Fitzy here, box crossed the line. Where does that put him? That will still put him fourth fastest at the moment. Ismail Nemri up into 6th place with 142.6. So we've got 2 minutes and 22 seconds on the clock. It will be pretty much a very interesting moment, but we do have potentially having a bit of time this evening. But it is going to be 2 minutes to go, and I'll tell you this, Timmy there potentially trying to push on. He's obviously got fire in his belly. Potentially he wants to try and wrap up the title this evening before it goes to the Nürburgring next week, but it will be very close, and it will probably be very personal as well. So you've got God Gift John potentially still aiming for pole position, which he looks like he's about to do. He's probably about to improve his lap time and go on board with Panos potentially as he goes down this 1,000 kilometre straight. Oh, he improves there with a 140.909, so that's potentially pushed him on a bit. Potentially Timmy's going to probably try and smash that time, is he? Because he's got a bit of traffic ahead of him. What's he going to do? Is he going to smash it? No, he doesn't, sadly not. Adam Morgan still in third place with 141.164 there. Potentially the pink highlighter machine, as I like to call it, Lee Fitzy with a 141.3, Ismail Nemri with a 142.3. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but the guys will have this lap as potentially the final lap for qualifying. So we do have Brian Ross at the tail of the field at the moment. Potentially, you know, he's obviously, I don't know whether he's been struggling this evening or he's just taking it steady, because it has been a bit of a rough and tumble season for most of these guys this time round, but anything can happen come the races this evening. We do have 3 8-lap races, and it will be very interesting as God Gift John powers his way out of Panasonic and potentially about to see what he can do. Can he smash his lap record, or is he going to be potentially on the money? It is going to be very tight. Let's see what he can do. He's pushing and pushing. Is he going to improve? No, he doesn't. So Timmy sits out the session, but he got to be careful because Adam Morgan's on a massive charge going out of Panasonic now, and potentially going to be seeing what he can do. Is he going to potentially get up into, Brian Ross gets up into a 132. Adam Morgan still remains third fastest at the moment. Lee Fitzy, what can he do? Is he going to smash that lap time? Is he going to knock Timmy off his perch? No, he doesn't. He goes fourth, which knocks Dean Atkinson down to fifth. So it is going to be very interesting indeed. Well, I believe Timmy at the moment is just going to sit out the remainder of the session, but you know, it is going to be very interesting to see exactly what happens for this evening. Potentially we do have, as I say, 3 lap three 8-lap races, not 3 laps. I do apologise. But it is going to be pretty much interesting come the start of race number 1 this evening. So you have God Gift John, you have obviously Timmy, followed by Adam Morgan, followed by Lee Fitzy, Dean Atkinson, Ismail Nemri, and of course Brian Ross. You know, at the moment Timmy's probably trying to eke out that advantage, but God Gift John at the moment is potentially going to get the point for fastest lap, and it will be very interesting to see what happens. It will go down to potentially a very interesting first race of the evening. So it will be potentially a very interesting race indeed. So we do have quite a bit of interest, you know. As I say, it will be very interesting. If you like what you see, guys, do like and subscribe to the Eldar Sim, and if you want to also see what's on offer, do check us out on Facebook as well, and it will be very much alive and potentially very much interesting this evening. So qualifying now has been brought to an end, so it will be very interesting. So qualifying now has ended, and yes, it is a very interesting battle what's going to happen here at Fuji this evening. We do have the likes of God Gift John and Timmy, followed by Adam Morgan, Lee Fitzy and Dean Atkinson and Ismail Nemri, and of course Brian Ross at the rear of the field. So we are going to get ready for a first 8-lap encounter this evening, and it will be potentially very interesting as the 5 lights are about to turn to green any moment now, and we will get ready for 8 laps here at Fuji Speedway this evening as God Gift John gets an absolute magical start in towards turn number 1, but Adam Morgan jinks to the left, so does Timmy. There's a bit of contact there between Adam Morgan. He has a bit of a spin. I don't know exactly what's happened, but it looks like Lee Fitzy's got held up into that, but it looks like there was a bit of a touch between God Gift John and of course Adam Morgan there, but potentially Ismail Nemri up into 3rd place. He's capitalised on the mistake. Brian Ross and Dean Atkinson having a bit of a door bashing moment, but it's nothing light. Potentially it's just a bit of contact. Adam Morgan and Lee Fitzy potentially are going to battle, but it's looking likely Lee Fitzy's trying to escape or trying to get onto the back of Adam Morgan, but at the moment we've got Timmy leading the race, potentially. Ismail Nemri, what happened to Ismail? He looked like he went a bit wide into Dunlop, and potentially we'll see what we can't go that far because it's gone to the start of the race. I do apologise, but it looked like Ismail got a bit crossed up going into Dunlop there, which is allowed potentially Adam Morgan and Lee Fitzy trying to gain onto the back of him, which has now got Timmy under threat from Panos, potentially trying to take the lead of the race. Potentially it will be a very interesting battle as we go through towards lap number 2 out of 8, and it's going to be potentially a very long and potentially interesting battles. Timmy goes into turn number 1 very side by side. Potentially Panos gets now that grip onto out of turn number 1. Potentially Timmy's going to have to try harder to try and get back past him, and Dean Atkinson rather is trying to put Brian Ross at bay. Potentially Brian Ross in 4th place at the moment. Ismail Nemri sadly in 5th place at the moment after doing so well, potentially getting onto the podium in what would have been a difficult season for him this season. Adam Morgan in 6th place, and then Lee Fitzy in 7th at the moment. God Gift John potentially going to be being put under a lot of threat from Timmy. Timmy is trying to put him under a lot of threat going into Dunlop. There he's potentially all over the boot lid of God Gift John's Porsche Cayman, potentially going up towards next corner. He's potentially going to be pushing on, but Panos there, he's trying to hold off Timmy as we go into next corner, and then obviously getting into Panasonic here. Potentially it's going to be very interesting. There's obviously gaps galore, but Brian Ross and Dean Atkinson at the moment doing a stellar job trying to eke out that advantage, but we will try and see exactly what is ongoing. But Timmy there potentially trying to eke out an advantage, trying to get up to God Gift John's rear bumper of the Cayman as we go down 1,000 kilometers straight. It is going to be very much interesting. Timmy, what's he going to do? Is he going to try and make his move on lap 3, already out of 8? It potentially will be a very interesting event this evening. Obviously, you do have Dean Atkinson potentially 3rd. At the moment, he's potentially doing a stellar job, potentially trying to escape from Brian Ross. Then you have Adam Morgan, obviously now got past Ismail Nemri. We didn't see exactly what happened, but it is going to be very much interesting as we head up to the Waycross hairpin. It's potentially going to be very close battle. Obviously Lee Fitzy also there, potentially trying to put Ismail Nemri under a lot of threat and probably a lot of interest. The Japanese fans are loving this. But going back to this battle between God Gift John and of course Timmy at the moment, potentially for the title nemesis, they are going to potentially see what happens. God Gift John's last lap time was a 141.5, but that was his last time out there. Potentially it is going to be very interesting. We'll just go back. Ismail Nemri has a penalty, so Lee Fitzy actually gets past him. We just had to see that just out of camera shot going into next corner. But at the moment, Timmy is still trying to put Panos under a lot of threat, potentially for the race win. Potentially trying to eke out that advantage in the championship. It will be very interesting to see exactly what happens. Timmy is all over the back of Panos now, potentially for first place. Panos runs a bit wide going out of turn number 1, heading up towards Coca-Cola now. It is going to be very interesting, obviously going into Coca-Cola, but obviously Timmy there is putting Panos under a considerable amount of pressure, going through 300R there. Potentially it will be one of the best overtaking manoeuvres if he gets it done into the Waycross hairpin, but he doesn't at the moment. He's obviously putting a bit of threat, but Adam Morgan there potentially eking out that advantage from Lee Fitzy. And of course Ismail Nemri. We're going back to this battle going towards Dunlop now. God Gift John potentially is going to have to try and not let Timmy pass, but he's going to have to potentially have a bit of a battle. Timmy's coming. Timmy is going to get him. Potentially he's got the outside. We did have the outside to next corner, but potentially he'll have the outside for Panasonic unless he can get into the inside. But at the moment, God Gift John putting him under, considerably holding on to this pressure with potentially 4 laps to go at the end of this lap. It will be very much interesting to see exactly what happens. But it will be that Dean Atkinson and of course Brian Ross also have a bit of a considerable gap. But we do have Adam Morgan and Lee Fitzy. Lee Fitzy's taking his penalty, and Ismail Nemri will try and latch onto the back of him. But at the moment, going into turn number 1, Timmy actually gets to move stick, but he's lost the back of the Porsche Cayman, which has unfortunately dropped him back from God Gift John. Now he pushed too hard, potentially into turn number 1, but going into Coca-Cola Bend, he's now going to be under threat from Dean Atkinson. Potentially as Dean gets a 1 second penalty, potentially trying to push on. Brian Ross there in 4th place, followed by Adam Morgan, and Lee Fitzy has now got back past Ismail Nemri, potentially for 6th place, but at the moment it is looking likely there's hardly any battles, but we'll try and stick through what we've got. Dean Atkinson there with that 1 second penalty, potentially trying to push on. He's trying to get up to Timmy, potentially, if you know, to try and take that advantage there. Adam Morgan in 5th place, followed by Lee Fitzy and followed by Ismail Nemri. Potentially trying to push on to get past Lee Fitzy, potentially for 6th place at the moment, but at the moment God Gift John potentially leading the race, potentially trying to eke out that advantage which he deserves, and obviously he wants to try and get back on top of the tree, potentially for the last meeting at the Nürburgring as of next week. Excuse me, as Timmy tries to do exactly the same, but it looks like Dean Atkinson and Brian Ross has the momentum, which drops Dean back into 4th place, but at the moment Brian Ross potentially going to have that move done for 3rd place at the moment. But you've also got Lee Fitzy and Ismail Nemri potentially having a bit of a ding-dong battle, potentially for 6th place at the moment. Potentially the cars are agile at the moment with 2 laps to go in the opening race of the evening here at Fuji for the BTCC Blueprints Porsche Cayman Supercup, brought to you by Eldar Racing, and it is going to be pretty much amazing to see exactly what is ongoing. But at the moment Panos is eking out that gap. He's got 3.5 of a gap from Timmy. Potentially if Timmy hadn't made that mistake going into turn number 1, Timmy probably would have had the same amount of gap ahead of Panos there, but it is looking likely at the moment. Brian Ross potentially pushing on, trying to escape from Dean Atkinson. Potentially Brian wants a podium because he's proved a point over the last couple of weeks, but obviously a bit of a nightmare season for some of these guys, but you know, they're obviously so glad it's towards the end of the season now. But you've got Ismail Nemri and Lee Fitzy potentially still having that battle. Adam Morgan is also there, but it's going to be very close between these guys. But at the moment Brian Ross essentially trying to eke out that advantage as we go on to the penultimate lap of the race. It is going to be very interesting to see what happens with Brian Ross and Dean Atkinson, followed by Adam Morgan and Lee Fitzy, and of course Ismail Nemri. But at the moment God Gift John, that gap is considerably growing, but it's going down, and potentially has God Gift John got a issue, or is he just playing it safe? He goes into 100R now, potentially trying to push on as he goes towards the Wacos hairpin. But it is going to be very interesting. We've got Dean Atkinson now having put in Brian Ross under considerable amount of pressure. They're going to go into the hairpin for the penultimate time. It is going to be probably Dean Atkinson's one moment of fame potentially. Is he going to get past Brian Ross potentially for 3rd place before the race actually finishes, or is he going to be very much on Brian Ross's heels? But it will be very interesting. At the moment it looks like he's going to be putting Brian under considerable amount of pressure. But we've also got Adam Morgan, Lee Fitzy and of course Ismail Nemri exactly doing the same. But at the moment this is the closest battle we've got to date. Brian Ross and Dean Atkinson potentially going into Panasonic at the moment. Potentially, you know, Panos is about to start the final lap of the race number 1 here at Fuji this evening for the Eldar BTCC Blueprints Porsche Cayman Supercup. But it is going to be very interesting going into the 2nd and 3rd race of the evening. Brian Ross potentially in 3rd place at the moment, doing a considerable amount of stellar job, potentially trying to keep Dean Atkinson behind him. Dean Atkinson actually tries to make a move into turn number 1. He's actually almost level with Brian Ross's back bumper there. Potentially Brian's trying to hold on for dear life, potentially saying, come on Dean, you know, let's race fair and we can potentially do this. But it's going to be very interesting that Brian Ross in 3rd place at the moment, potentially having that bit of a battle. Lee Fitzy Of course, Ismail Nemri potentially also there. Timmy has a 4/10 penalty, but at the moment that shouldn't really hamper him because he's a bit far ahead of Brian Ross and of course Dean Atkinson. But Dean Atkinson is all over the back of him, potentially going into 100R, potentially down towards Dunlop here. Potentially it's going to be very much interesting to see exactly what happens. Dean Atkinson gives Brian a bit of a shove out of Dunlop, but it's not going to be considerably enough. But is Brian going to hold on going into the next bend, into nets? Is he going to try and hold on, or is Dean Atkinson going to pounce into Panasonic? We shall see, but it is going to be God Gift John at the moment that takes a considerable, yet again, another victory in the BTCC Blueprints Porsche Cayman Supercup. He's about to cross the line here and potentially take a victory from Timmy, as Brian Ross and of course Dean Atkinson potentially still push on for that final place on the podium. Who's going to get it? Brian Ross just gets it from Dean Atkinson. That was near enough level across the line. Adam Morgan there, Lee Fitzy comes home in 6th and Ismail Nemri in 7th. But I tell you what guys, considering there was only 7 drivers at the moment in this race, it has been very entertaining. But Panos takes another victory in the Porsche Cayman Supercup, the BTCC Blueprints, and it will be very much interesting. I'm just going to get the race results, just why we are here. Just why we're here, and I will get the replay as well. So bear with 1 second. So we will have potentially, it will be a rolling start with reverse grid. So what they're saying is, it sounds like Timmy wants that 150 board, but potentially it will be very much interesting to see exactly what happens. But it will be all or nothing this evening, potentially for a bit of interest. But I believe there was only, you know, it might have been a slight bit of contact, but you never know. This, I'll go through the race results of why we're here. God Gift John takes another win of the season, potentially with Timmy Gill behind him, and then obviously Brian Ross and obviously Dean Atkinson, Adam Morgan, Lee Fitzy, and of course Ismail Nemri rounding up the 7 runners this evening. Lee Fitzy actually gets the fastest lap of the race with 141.130 on lap number 6, which is going to put him in good stead for race number 2. So race number 2 is a rolling start, and it is a full grid reversal. So Ismail Nemri will potentially start on pole position, followed by Lee Fitzy and obviously Adam Morgan. Then it will be Dean Atkinson from Brian Ross, then obviously Timmy and God Gift John from the rear of the field. So as I say, it is going to be probably close, and it will probably be very exciting. We do have potentially one more race after this one, and then it will be onto the Nürburgring on the GP circuit as of the next week for the season finale, and it will be potentially very interesting. I don't know what I've done there, but you know. But potentially it will be very much interesting to see exactly what is ongoing, but you know, it is a bit of a shame the numbers are low this evening, but I hope you're enjoying the stream, whoever's watching the stream, and it will be potentially very much interesting to see exactly how well race 2 gets underway. So, we get underway very shortly for race number 2. Just gonna So we are going to get ready for race number 2 to start any minute. We're just going to make sure that everyone is ready, and we will get ready to go. So Ismail Namri also will try and lead them away. It is going to be very interesting to see exactly how well these guys can do. But we do have potentially, we do have the guys in order. It is looking likely that the 7 guys are here, and it is all correct. So Ismail Namri will lead them across the line potentially to start race number 2 out of 3 this evening, as we're about to get the green light on the starting gantry now, as Ismail Namri puts his foot down flat to the floor in his orange and black Porsche Cayman, followed by Lee Fitzy and Adam Morgan, and of course Dean Atkinson and Brian Ross, and of course Timmy Gill, and of course Panos, as Lee Fitzy tries to make a move into turn number 1, but Ismail there potentially runs a bit wide out of turn number 1, which has allowed Lee Fitzy back up into the lead. Potentially Ismail slots back in from Lee Fitzy there, but Adam Morgan is also trying to push on potentially for decent results here this evening. You've got Dean Atkinson escaping already from Brian Ross, Timmy Gill putting Brian under considerable amount of pressure, but as you can see here, Timmy is already got past Brian Ross, potentially still a move into the Waycross hairpin. Adam Morgan up into 2nd, or is he under threat now from Ismail Namri, and of course Dean Atkinson. Got Gift John also trying to do the same to Brian Ross. Ismail Namri tucks back into 3rd place, so Lee Fitzy at the moment escaping up the road. Ismail Namri 3rd, under threat from Timmy Gill. Timmy Gill in 4th place at the moment, going into next corner. He has Dean Atkinson on his inside. Dean Atkinson gets a bit of a fishtail, which has pushed Timmy into potentially a bit of contact. Timmy has the inside line going into Panasonic, which is going to be very interesting. Brian Ross also there, potentially trying to latch on. Got Gift John trying to make it a 3 wide, going down the back front straight, should I say. Probably 4 wide if we're not careful, because Timmy Gill's also there. But it is looking likely at the moment these 4 at the back are potentially Going to try and escape from each other. Lee Fitzy at the moment leading the race. Oh, bit of a switch for Panos there potentially. But it's looking likely there's going to be oh, Dean Atkinson almost gets the move done, but God Gift John gives him a bit of a nerf out of turn number 1. But it's looking likely Timmy's got the better. God Gift John in 5th place, followed by Brian Ross and of course Dean Atkinson. It's a bit unfortunate, you know, these guys are probably going to try and put on an amazing battle. But Dean Atkinson there in 7th place from Brian Ross, obviously Panos as well. Potentially Timmy there now trying to catch up to Ismail Nemri. And then you got Adam Morgan, Lee Fitzy potentially trying to escape away from the chasing pack. But at the moment Dean Atkinson and of course Brian Ross and of course God Gift John potentially pushing on quite a bit. You've got Panos trying to push up to Timmy. Timmy runs a bit wide, going out of Dunlop there, potentially trying to chase down Ismail Nemri, going into Net's corner. Potentially is going to be very tight on entry, but you've got Brian Ross and of course Panos potentially battling. Dean Atkinson's also there going into Panasonic. So it is going to be pretty much interesting going down the front straight as we see a bit of snow on the Mount Fuji, but it is going to be probably close between these 4 because Timmy is also involved in a bit of a scrap between these guys. But is he going to be eking out that advantage, or is he going to try and get away? But God Gift John at the moment trying to eke out that advantage up to Timmy, as Brian Ross does exactly the same. God Gift John into Timmy's boot lead, potentially trying to do shades of race number 1 there, as Brian Ross potentially gets into potentially escape from Dean Atkinson at the moment. But it is going to be very close, as we say around here. It is looking likely there is a lot of things ongoing, but I can guarantee you this, it will be all or nothing. But it is going to be very close and personal. You do have potentially Timmy there trying to escape up to Ismail Nemri, and potentially he's trying to get the move done, as he does going into Net's corner there. God Gift John also does exactly the same, but it looks like Adam Morgan potentially now into the lead of the race from Lee Fitzy there. Lee Fitzy and Adam are having a bit of a battle, so it's a bit of a Welsh battle for the lead of the race at the moment. You've got Timmy there in 3rd place, followed by Panos and Ismail Nemri, and of course Brian Ross and Dean Atkinson potentially pushing on potentially to catch up to these guys. But it is looking likely at the moment Adam Morgan and Lee Fitzy are going to go side by side down into turn number 1. It could be very much interesting as we see Timmy, Panos and Ismail Nemri. Lee Fitzy actually gets to move into turn number 1, but Panos gets back in front of Timmy. Timmy is not going to like that. Panos gets a bit rubbed out wide as Ismail Nemri tries to do exactly a move on to Timmy, going into Coca-Cola Ben there, potentially going into 300R, and then obviously into the Waycross hairpin. Dean Atkinson now has got past Brian Ross for 6th place, and Lee Fitzy still leading the race. It is going to be pretty much interesting. Ismail Nemri on a massive charge, potentially wants to get onto the podium. You know, as I say, some of these guys have probably had mixed fortunes and mixed emotions this season, but at the moment it is looking likely Timmy is trying to hold off Ismail Nemri, so the Dutchman there potentially trying to get past Timmy, but Timmy's running a bit wide still, out of Dunlop there. Adam Morgan under, putting Lee Fitzy under a considerable amount of threat going into towards Panasonic Bend. Here is going to be all or nothing potentially, but it is going to be very much interesting to see exactly what happens. But it will be very interesting to carry on, but it will be all or nothing this evening. But we will potentially have There's a bit of squeezing because Panos has got past Ismail Nemri, but it looked like there's going to be 3 wide going down the front straight. Who's going to break into turn 1? Who's going to be the bravest? It also looks like Adam Morgan's got the lead into here, but it looks like Timmy and God Gift John, shades of race 1 and obviously lap number 4 just a moment ago, but Panos gets back into 3rd place. It is looking likely Adam Morgan is going to be pushing on. Potentially a lot of battles galore. It's going to be very interesting. Timmy there in 4th place, trying to hold off Ismail Nemri. Brian Ross trying to make a move. Also in the background on Dean Atkinson, Timmy there, putting Panos under considerable amount of pressure, which has allowed Ismail Nemri potentially to push on the outside, but he's lost a bit of ground. Timmy's going to have to be careful because he's got Panos at front of him and he's also got Ismail behind him. We're going into Dunlop and going out of Dunlop now. It will be very interesting. Timmy actually tries to make the move stick, which he does, but then Ismail Nemri gets a bit of a drift though. But it will be very much interesting. Obviously Dean Atkinson and Brian Ross are potentially there. Lee Fitzy and Adam Morgan, the 2 Welsh boys, potentially having a battle of their own. But at the moment it is going to be very much interesting. Going out of Panasonic, Lee Fitzy is potentially on a massive charge, potentially trying to put Adam Morgan under considerable amount of pressure. For 1st place, Lee Fitzy and Adam Morgan side by side going down this straight into turn number 1. He's looking very feisty, and tell you what, Dean Atkinson's also caught up to the back of Ismail Nemri, Timmy and God Gift John. One way or another, this is going to be very close. God Gift John and Timmy potentially going into turn number 1. Lee Fitzy has the lead of the race, but Adam Morgan is also there. Ismail Nemri gets shoved out wide. I don't know whether Dean Atkinson just give him a bit of a knock, but it's dropped him down into 6th place. Brian Ross 7th. Obviously Lee Fitzy there still within a chance of a mega race. You know, so far this is going to be very close because Panos yet again has Timmy right behind him going into the Waycross hairpin. It is going to be potentially very close going down into 100R, and it will be very much a bit of a battle. Ismail Nemri now into 7th place. Brian Ross has the move sticked, but potentially Timmy and God Gift John going into Dunlop. It is going to be very close. Timmy and Panos, they're almost glued to each other's bumpers there. Potentially Panos gives Timmy a bit of a move, but oh, this is going to be close. Lee Fitzy and Adam Morgan are also doing exactly near enough the same up at front, but going into Panasonic at the moment. Timmy is trying to go on the inside. Oh, it gives Panos a bit of a shove going out of Panasonic. He's lost a bit of it, which has lost a bit of ground now, which has allowed Dean Atkinson potentially up into 4th place. So Timmy has to now settle for 5th place. Oh, this has been exciting as we go on to the penultimate lap of the race already. It seems like it's only just race 2's only just started, but no. Here we are on the penultimate lap of the race. Dean Atkinson in 4th place at the moment, but looking at this, Lee Fitzy and of course Adam Morgan, the 2 Welsh lads, potentially battling for 1st and 2nd at the moment. This is fantastic stuff. This could end in tears though, I tell you what. Going down into 300R now, potentially heading towards the Waycross hairpin. It's going to be very interesting, I tell you this. So Adam Morgan there trying and get past Lee Fitzy, try and get past the purple and black machine going in towards Dunlop, or into 100R now, potentially going to be having a bit of a challenge. Dunlop right hand sweeper is potentially going to be very close. Adam Morgan has a bit of an advantage, but looking back to what's going on further back from 3rd to 4th to 5th to potentially 6th, sadly Ismail Nemri's just had a bit of a drop back, but potentially he will do okay for race number 3, and it will be all or nothing potentially for Lee Fitzy at the moment. Is he going to eke out that advantage, or is Adam Morgan going to pounce on him like the Pink Panther machine behind him, potentially trying to break the toe from Adam Morgan at the moment, but it's looking likely Adam Morgan there, as we're about to start the last lap of the race, potentially going to be pushing on. He's going to try and actually latch up to the back of Lee Fitzy going down into turn 1. Lee Fitzy has a bit of... has he got an issue, or is Adam Morgan just going to... oh, there's going to be a bit of a move. Adam Morgan tried to do it on the outside, potentially gets a bit crossed up, but is still there, potentially with Lee Fitzy. God give John allows is still in 3rd place. Dean Atkinson in 4th, followed by Timmy. Timmy's there trying to get up into 4th place, but it's looking likely he's going to have to try and do it sooner than later. Ismail Namri sadly having a bit of a nightmare. I don't know whether he's had a bit of issues, but you know he's going to be okay. But Lee Fitzy there trying to hold off Adam Morgan potentially for 1st place at the moment. Lee Fitzy runs a bit wide going out of the Wacos hairpin into 100 are now going towards the Dunlop sweeper. It will be potentially another Wales 1-2 potentially in this race. It potentially will be very interesting. Lee Fitzy and Adam Morgan potentially pushing on still. Timmy up now into 4th. Dean Atkinson loses 4th place from Timmy. Brian Ross in 6th. Then Ismail Nemri with a 4-10 penalty. It's been a bit of a rocky season for Ismail, but it looks like Lee Fitzy going out of Panasonic now has that lead covered, or is he trying to break the toe away from Adam Morgan? It is going to be Lee Fitzy that takes a victory this evening in race number 2 here at Fuji. Flashes the light. Adam Morgan 2nd, followed by God Gift John. Timmy and Dean Atkinson actually gets 4th on the line from Timmy there, which was, oh, that was close. Brian Ross in 6th, followed by Ismail Nemri in 7th place. So it is going to be very interesting going into the final race of the evening, and I'll tell you what, it will be very much very interesting. We do have potentially one more race to go this evening. I'll tell you this, and just get the race results very quickly. Just ready for a bit of a battle, but hopefully it will be very interesting going into race number 3. I'll tell you this, guys, it will be very much interesting. So we will have technically so race 3 will be very shortly. We do have Lee Fitzy taking an astounding win from Adam Morgan, followed by God Gift John, and of course Dean Atkinson takes 4th from Timmy on the line. Timmy in 5th, followed by Brian Ross and Ismail Nemri. God Gift John actually gets the fastest lap on the last lap of the race with a 1:41.118, and it is going to be pretty much interesting. I'll tell you this now, it will be very much close and probably very interesting going into the last race of the evening. It may not feel like it's the last race of the evening because the race has been considerably amount of battles, but we will see what happens. But it seems to me that it is going to be very much interesting to see what happens. but at the moment we do have 2 minutes to go. It will be probably potentially very close now that we do have now potentially 8 runners for the last race of the evening, and it will be very close and personal, but we do have technically a very interesting So we will see what happens for race number 3 in a moment or two. So is it going to go down to the wire? Because it may be very much interesting to see exactly what happens for race number 2, race number 3 rather, not race number 2. I do apologise, getting way ahead of myself. So let's see if we can do this. So we will see exactly what happens for the last race of the evening, and we'll see exactly what happens within a very much interesting, the race was actually very mega come race number 2. But it's looking likely Lee Fitzy followed by Adam Morgan and God Gift John. And now that we have Dan Cope joining for the last race of the evening, potentially he's had a bit of mechanical dramas this evening, so hopefully he doesn't do too bad. The green light is about to turn on now, and we are about to get underway for the last race of the evening of the BTCC Blueprints Porsche Cayman Supercup, live and exclusive on the Eldar Sim YouTube channel. So going into turn number 1, who is going to make the move? Dan Cope there, actually having a bit of a moment there, pushing out wide, potentially Panos there. He's potentially now dropped back into 8th place, which is a bit unfortunate. Adam Morgan leads the race from Dean Atkinson, followed by Brian Ross and Timmy. Lee Fitzy also lost a bit of ground, so potentially Lee Fitzy now is 6th at the moment, followed by Dan Cope. You've got Adam Morgan leading this race, potentially pushing on, and he will have potentially Dean Atkinson behind him. So the 2 brightly coloured cars at the moment potentially pushing each other all the way, potentially going into Dunlop, and it will be very much interesting as we see what's happening further back. Timmy there with a 5/10 penalty, potentially whether he's just pushed a bit too hard as Brian Ross and Ismail Nemri potentially want to be having a fight onto the podium going into next bend. Potentially Ismail there trying to hold on to back of Brian Ross, and obviously Lee Fitzy trying to potentially have a bit of Timmy's back bumper potentially, but Timmy is always got a bit of squirm. Essentially he's going to have to try and sort out a bit of Bit of a battle there. He's potentially now going off the racing line to take his penalty just in time. Potentially he's lost a couple of places though, which Dan Cope also takes his penalty. But it's looking like they've got Gift John trying to push on, potentially trying to take 6th place from Lee 5th place from Lee Fitzy. Almost takes Ismail Numri out in the process, but it's looking likely Ismail Numri potentially having a bit of a squirm now. I don't know exactly what he's trying to do, but got Gift John under a lot of threat from Lee Fitzy, potentially going down towards 100 or is it 300 or I can't remember exactly which one. It's looking likely Ismail with a 1 second penalty there, potentially has a bit of a battle. As you see, Lee Fitzy got past Panos for 5th place yet again. Adam Morgan actually at the moment still leading this race. He's potentially putting Dean Atkinson, trying to get that advantage away from Dean Atkinson, potentially for 1st place at the moment. Potentially Dean Atkinson wants a win. I believe Adam wants an even bigger win, potentially trying to make it a Welsh double this evening, potentially for Wales. So potentially Dean Atkinson wants to spoil that party. Lee Fitzy up into 4th now, potentially after Ismail Nemri's penalty. God Gift John 5th, Timmy 6th, and Ismail 7th, followed by Dan Cope in 8th place. I believe Dan Cope's having a bit of a nightmare this evening, potentially missed the first 2 races with mechanical difficulties, but potentially he's now back for the final race of the evening as Adam Morgan potentially tries to eke out that advantage from Dean Atkinson, potentially Dean Atkinson with a 141.145, potentially trying to push on. Potentially he's got the fastest lap of the race at the moment, but it's looking likely Lee Fitzy's trying to hold off from God Gift John at the moment, potentially for 4th place at the moment. Potentially it could end in a lot of tears, but we shall see exactly what goes on within the latter part of the race. But obviously Timmy there potentially in 6th place, followed by Ismail Numri and of course Dan Cope. But going back to this battle between Dean Atkinson and Adam Morgan, potentially going out the Waycross hairpin down towards the Dunlop sweeper. He's going into 300R. Potentially he's going to be very much trying to hold off from Dean Atkinson at the moment. Potentially it is going to be very close, and it probably will be very personal, and potentially anything can happen within the last part of the race here this evening. This is race number 3, but it is going to be very close. Adam Morgan there potentially with Dean Atkinson potentially filling his rearview mirror full of green and white machinery. But it's looking like Brian Ross still in 4th place. Lee Fitzy and of course Panos potentially still battling away. But Timmy's got to be careful, because Timmy needs to try and eke out this advantage away from Panos potentially for the Championship League going into the final round. But it is going to be very interesting because Panos is alongside Lee Fitzy, potentially now for 4th place going into turn number 1 here. But it is going to be very close. I believe Dean Atkinson almost had the move stick, but Panos has got into 4th. Brian Ross runs a bit wide out of turn number 1, potentially going into Coca-Cola Bend, where we're going in now. Potentially it's going to be very much interesting, but Brian Ross squirming that Porsche Cayman about. It's looking likely Adam Morgan potentially now under threat from Dean Atkinson. Potentially Dean Atkinson into the Waycross hairpin. It looks like Brian Ross has tried to nearly enough concede a place from God Gift John there, potentially for 3rd place. Brian Ross still battling. It's going to be very much interesting because Lee Fitzy's also there. Oh, Panos gets a bit of a lean on by Brian Ross. Brian Ross gets back in front, but Panos there potentially has a bit of a nightmare. He's lost ground to Lee Fitzy as well, and Timmy's also there, his championship nemesis, that essentially has a bit. Oh, Panos has a squirm, but it's going to be very much interesting. You've got Timmy trying to get up to this battle as well. Dan Cope in 8th. Adam Morgan at the moment potentially trying to push away from Dean Atkinson, But Dean Atkinson's trying to follow him and try and follow every move like he's on the disco floor. He's potentially having a disco party on the dance floor. But God Gift John's trying to do exactly the same. There's a bit of dom and mirror bashing going down the front straight. Lee Fitzy also there. Brian Ross actually now concedes fourth, maybe fifth to Lee Fitzy, and of course God Gift John. Potentially Timmy's also there. It could be 4 wide into turn number 1. This is not going to work, lads. But potentially you've got Lee Fitzy and God Gift John, and of course Brian Ross potentially doing an absolute stellar job. But at the moment you've got Adam Morgan from Dean Atkinson potentially putting Adam under considerable amount of threat. It is going to be very much interesting. What is Dean Atkinson got to do to try and get past Adam Morgan for first place at the moment? Adam Morgan controlling that pink machine way in front, but look at this battle between Lee Fitzy, Panos, and of course Brian Ross, and of course Timmy at the moment potentially going into Dunlop. Just looking at the gap up ahead, it's looking likely, I'll tell you this, Dean Atkinson trying to actually push up to Adam Morgan, potentially going into net spend, and potentially it's going to be very much interesting going into Panasonic this time round, potentially with 3 laps to go. It's going to be very close, and it probably is going to be very personal as well, but potentially it will be all or nothing. But it will be a bit of a chance, and potentially a very much Adam Morgan here potentially holding on for dear life. God Gift John still in 3rd place, followed by Lee Fitzy, followed by Brian Ross, and of course Timmy potentially. There is going to be 3 potentially battles, but Ismail Nemri and Dan Cope are still at the rear of the field. But with 3 laps to go, it is going to be Adam Morgan potentially pushing on for a victory. He's probably going to try and see what he can do. Has he got the style? Has he got the skills to hold off Dean Atkinson? Potentially the pink highlighter versus the green and white machine. Potentially, obviously Dean Atkinson trying to push Adam Morgan considerably under considerable pressure. Panos there potentially still trying to eke out that advantage from Lee Fitzy. But Timmy's got past Brian Ross for potentially 5th place at the moment, followed by Ismail Nemri and of course Dan Cope. But it's looking likely at the moment Adam Morgan trying to escape from Dean Atkinson as we go into Dunlop potentially. It's going to be very close going into the final 2 laps of the race. I'll tell you this now. I'll tell you this for next to now. It